I found my wife cheating with her boss on our honeymoon, and then she forged my signature to claim $300, $0 from our joint account. Now she's trying to take our house and kids while I'm left broke and betrayed. I never thought I'd be the guy to get like this, especially not on my honeymoon. But there I was, sitting in our hotel room, staring at the screen of my phone, realizing that everything I believed about my marriage was a lie. The craziest part. I had no idea it was coming until I accidentally stumbled upon it. It was a moment that changed my life forever, and I still can't wrap my head around how quickly everything unraveled. My wife and I had been together for about 6 years. We met in college and everything seemed perfect, or at least it did until the last few months. She'd been acting weird, distant even. She'd brush off my questions, say she was busy with work or that she was stressed. But I noticed little things. Her phone always hidden, secretive texts, her being overly defensive if I ever tried to look at her phone or her emails. I figured maybe she was just tired or stressed, but deep down I knew something was off. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then came the trip. We planned this fancy honeymoon in Hawaii, a week away from everything. I was excited, trying to relax, but seemed distracted. She was constantly messaging someone, and I caught her in a few lies about where she was or who she was talking to. It was small stuff at first, but the gut feeling kept gnawing at me. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe she was just stressed about work or something. But then, on the third night, I found the proof I never expected to see. It started with a text message from her boss, Mark, that popped up on her phone when she was in the bathroom. It was a flirty message, something about "can't wait to see you again and miss you already." My stomach dropped. I froze, staring at that message like my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Came out of the bathroom and I quickly tried to hide my reaction, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But my mind was racing. What the hell was she doing? Was she really cheating on me? I kept my cool that night, but I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything, trying to find a reason, some excuse. But that message was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few days, I started noticing more. She'd disappear for hours, always telling me she was working late or meeting clients. But I'd catch her sneaking her phone into the bathroom, hiding her screen when I'd walk by. She'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, call me paranoid or insecure. That's when I knew for sure she was cheating. The final blow came when I saw her leaving the hotel late at night, her face flushed, hair disheveled. I followed her just to see where she was going. She met Mark in a nearby parking lot and they kissed. I watched in disbelief as she practically threw herself into his arms, then got into his car. I was stunned. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with her boss, right in the middle of our honeymoon. That moment was like a punch to the gut. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. All at once, I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I went back to the room, my mind racing. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let her know I'd seen everything. But I also knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to figure out what to do next. How do you come back from something like that? How do you face the woman you married after discovering she's been lying, cheating, and sneaking around? I was broken, but I also knew I had to act fast. Because once trust is shattered, it's almost impossible to put it back together. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and my stomach was in knots. I kept replaying everything I saw, the kiss, her sneaking off, the lies she'd been spinning about her work. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How did I miss all the signs? How did I not see that the woman I loved was capable of doing something so reckless? It felt like my entire world was crumbling, and I was just standing there, helpless. I decided to confront her that morning. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, especially not after what I had seen. I waited until she was in the bathroom, then I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I needed to see if there was more messages, more proof, anything that could confirm what I already knew. My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were dozens of texts between her and Mark, some explicit, some just flirtatious. She'd been lying to my face all along, acting like everything was perfect, while secretly planning secret meetings with her boss. She even had a code for their meetings. Working late actually meant sneaking off to see him. I felt sick. My wife, the woman I'd trusted with everything, was cheating on me repeatedly, and I had no idea. I took a deep breath and waited for her to come out. When she finally did, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We need to talk." Her face immediately went pale and she tried to brush it off, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. But I wasn't about to let her gaslight me. I showed her the messages. Her reaction was priceless. She lied, of course, claiming those texts were just harmless flirting, that she never meant for it to go this far. She told me I was reading too much into things, that she loved me and only ever wanted me. But I knew better. I knew she was lying. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. How could she do this? How could she destroy everything we built? I was furious, but I also felt a deep sadness. That's when I realized that my marriage was over. Her excuses didn't matter anymore. I saw her for what she was, a woman who'd been lying and cheating for months, maybe longer. I told her I needed some space and that we'd talk later. I went for a walk outside, trying to clear my head. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her get away with it. I had to protect myself and whatever was left of my dignity. I started thinking about the money, about everything she'd been hiding. I remembered that she'd been acting strange about our finances lately, secretive, defensive, always claiming she was handling things. That's when I remembered she'd recently taken out a loan, forged my signature, and drained a large chunk of our savings. That realization hit me like a freight train. She forged my signature to claim $300, $0 from our joint account. That was the final straw. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the betrayal of everything we'd built. I couldn't believe she'd go that far. She was willing to steal from me, from our family, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I felt sick thinking about how she'd planned all this, possibly for months. And she was still trying to manipulate the situation, trying to spin her lies. I knew I had to act. I couldn't just sit back and let her keep doing this. I started making calls, lawyers, financial advisors, anyone who could help me understand what I could do. I wanted to protect my rights, my money, and my kids, because I realized that her ultimate goal was to take everything I had, our house, the kids, the money, while I was left with nothing but a broken heart. That's when I made a decision. I was going to fight this, no matter what it took. I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I looked at her that morning, knowing everything she'd done, and I felt a cold resolve settle inside me. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about standing up for myself and making sure she didn't get away with destroying everything I cared about. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not this time. After I gathered myself enough to think clearly, I started digging into everything I could about the financial mess she'd created. I didn't trust her word anymore, not after the lies and the forged signature. I managed to get access to our joint account records, and sure enough, there was that $300, $0 withdrawal, completely unapproved, forged signatures, and a fake note claiming I authorized it. I couldn't believe she'd go so far. Stealing that kind of money was a clear line. She crossed it and then some. I immediately contacted my bank and the lawyer I found through some quick research. I told them everything about the affair, the forged signature, the money. The bank froze the account, but I knew that was just the beginning. She had already taken the money, and I had no doubt she'd try to do more. That's when I realized I had to act fast if I wanted to stop her from doing even more damage. Meanwhile, kept spinning her lies. She insisted that everything was a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a business associate, that I was overreacting, jealous even. She claimed she never cheated, that I was imagining things, and that I was paranoid. She told me I was crazy for accusing her of stealing money, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw the way she looked at me, defensive, guilty, like she was trying to hide something. I could tell she was panicking, and that made me more determined to get to the bottom of it. I started talking to some friends, people who knew her well, to get a better sense of what she was up to. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. She'd been planning this for a while. She'd been secretive about her phone, her bank accounts, even her conversations with Mark. I found out she'd been meeting him in secret for months, probably even before the honeymoon. She'd been lying about her work trips, her late nights, everything. The pieces fit together now, and I was furious. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and sick to my stomach. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see her true face earlier. All those nights I stayed up, trying to fix things, trying to make her happy. I was just blind. I had trusted her with everything, and she had been lying right to my face. It was like finding out the woman I loved was a complete stranger. I also started thinking about the kids. We have 2 little girls, and I couldn't imagine how this was affecting them. I didn't want to involve them in the mess, but I knew I had to protect them from the fallout. I didn't want them growing up thinking this kind of betrayal was normal. I decided I'd keep the focus on protecting their stability, making sure they felt loved and safe, even if everything else was falling apart. That same day, I confronted again. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money, everything. That's when she finally broke down, crying, saying she was sorry, claiming she'd been under immense pressure at work, that Mark was just a confidant, and that she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She begged me to forgive her, said she loved me, that she'd fix everything. But I couldn't hear it. Her words felt hollow now. I saw through her lies. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who'd betrayed me in the worst way. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I'd be talking to a lawyer and that she needed to leave the house. I couldn't have her lying around, trying to manipulate me or the situation. I wanted her gone, not just physically, but out of my life emotionally. She argued, said she was sorry, tried to make me feel guilty, but I shut her down. I knew I needed to protect myself and my kids from her chaos. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This was the end of our marriage as I knew it. That evening, I started planning my next move. I reached out to a divorce attorney, prepared myself mentally for a tough fight, and started collecting every piece of evidence I could: texts, bank records, emails. I knew she'd try to spin her narrative, try to manipulate the situation, but I was ready. I wasn't going to let her destroy me or take everything I worked for. I was determined to stand my ground, no matter how much it hurt. Because at that moment, I realized that the woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And I knew that the only way forward was to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant losing her forever. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, calls to banks, and endless nights staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. I felt like I was caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Kept trying to call, to text, to plead, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every time I thought about her lying, cheating, forging my signature, stealing from me, I felt a surge of rage that I couldn't quite control. She had taken everything: money, trust, my peace of mind, and she was still trying to manipulate the situation. I remember sitting across from my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa, who laid out the reality of what I was facing. She explained that I had a strong case for divorce, especially considering the financial fraud and her infidelity. She told me to be prepared for her to fight dirty, that might try to claim I was abusive or unstable to turn things against me. But I knew better. I had nothing to hide. I was just a man betrayed, trying to hold on to what little stability I had left. Meanwhile, behavior grew more erratic. She started showing up at the house, demanding to see the kids, crying, begging me to forgive her. She threw tantrums, accused me of ruining her life, and even claimed I was the one cheating on her. It was bizarre. I couldn't believe I married someone who could lie so convincingly, even to herself. I wanted to believe she'd change, that she'd see the damage she'd caused, but deep down, I knew she was still lying, still trying to manipulate the situation. One day, she showed up with a lawyer of her own, trying to push me into a settlement. She claimed she deserved half the house, half the savings, full custody of the kids. I was stunned. She was trying to play the victim, to make me look like the bad guy. I knew her game. She was desperate, cornered, and willing to do anything to keep her grip on what she wanted. But I refused to be manipulated anymore. I had evidence of her affair: the forged signature, the stolen money. I was ready to fight for full custody, not just to protect my assets, but to keep her from using the kids as pawns. In the meantime, I started working with a private investigator. I needed proof of her ongoing lies and her relationship with Mark. Sure enough, I caught her in a few more secret meetings. She'd been lying about everything, about her whereabouts, about her relationship with Mark, even about her plans to leave the city. She was still trying to manipulate her way out of this mess, thinking she could somehow spin her way back into my good graces. But I was done playing her game. I had enough evidence now to make sure she would get away with it. The financial situation was getting worse. She had forged my signature to claim that $300, $0, and the bank was now investigating. I had to file a restraining order to prevent her from accessing more of our accounts. I was also working with a forensic accountant to trace every cent she'd taken and to see if she'd hidden any more money or assets. I couldn't believe she'd risk everything just to get her way. It was reckless, selfish, and deeply cruel. She was willing to destroy our family for her own gain. Every day I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. I was angry at her betrayal, sad for what we'd lost, and exhausted from fighting this uphill battle. I kept asking myself how it all went so wrong, how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with so much. But then I remembered one thing: she chose this path. She chose to cheat, to steal, to lie. I wasn't the villain here. I was just a man who trusted the woman he loved, only to be betrayed in the worst way. Despite everything, I still loved my kids, and I knew I had to stay strong for them, if not for myself. I made a promise that I'd do whatever it took to protect them from her chaos. I knew she'd try to manipulate the custody arrangements, but I was prepared with all the evidence I had. I wanted them to grow up knowing that their father fought for them, that he didn't let betrayal define him. That's what kept me going through the darkest nights, knowing I had to be the steady, responsible parent, even when my heart was breaking. Looking back now, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and it can shatter in an instant. People can lie, cheat, and steal, even those closest to you. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can face betrayal, fight for what's right, and come out the other side. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: I won't let her destroy me. Not this time. I owe that to myself, and I owe it to my kids. The legal process dragged on for months, and each day felt like a new battle. Kept trying to manipulate, twist the truth, and spin her lies, but I had enough evidence now to counter her every move. My lawyer worked tirelessly, preparing for every possible scenario. I was determined not to let her take everything: our house, the kids, the money. I knew she was desperate, but I also knew I had to stay composed. Losing my temper or making rash decisions would only give her ammunition. One of the most shocking moments came during a court hearing when she accused me of being abusive and unstable. She brought her own lawyer, who tried to paint me as the villain, claiming I was overly controlling and volatile. I couldn't believe she was stooping so low, trying to manipulate the system to her advantage. I sat there, calm, composed, and waited for my chance to speak. When I did, I laid out all the evidence: screenshots of her texts, the forged signatures, the bank records. I explained how she'd been lying about everything, how she'd stolen from us, and how her affair with Mark was ongoing. The judge looked at her with suspicion, especially after seeing the evidence. It was clear she was trying to manipulate the situation, but her lies did. Hold up. The court ordered an immediate forensic audit of our finances, and I felt a small sense of relief knowing that the truth was finally coming to light. I also filed for full custody of the kids, knowing that her instability and her manipulative tactics could put them at risk. Meanwhile, desperation grew. She started showing up at the house unannounced, trying to guilt me into letting her stay or at least see the kids. She'd cry, plead, even throw tantrums, trying to make me feel guilty for breaking up the family. But I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I had to think about what was best for the kids, and I knew that her constant instability and her lies weren't good for them. I had to protect them from her chaos. The money situation was also coming to a head. The bank had completed its forensic audit, and it confirmed that had illegally drained our accounts, forged my signature, and transferred large sums into accounts she controlled. The court ordered her to return the stolen money and barred her from accessing any of our funds without my approval. I was relieved that at least some justice was being served, but I knew this wasn't over yet. She was still trying to fight for custody and to keep her grip on whatever she could. Throughout all this, I felt a lot of emotions. Anger, yes, but also sadness, disappointment, and even guilt. Guilt because I wondered if I should have seen the signs earlier, if I could have done something differently. But then I remembered that I was just as much as everyone else. No one expects their wife to betray them, especially not in such a calculated, malicious way. The hardest part was watching her try to spin her narrative in front of the judge, pretending she was the victim. But I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to prove it. I stayed calm, focused on protecting my kids and making sure the court saw her for what she truly was, a woman capable of lying, cheating, and stealing everything from her own family. As the court proceedings continued, I started to feel a strange sense of relief. I knew I was going to win the fight. That didn't erase the pain or the betrayal, but it gave me hope that I could rebuild my life. I realized that I had been so focused on fixing what was broken that I hadn't fully accepted how deeply she'd hurt me. But now, I was starting to see that I was stronger than her lies, more resilient than her manipulations. I could move forward, rebuild, and find happiness again without her. I also learned an important lesson. Never ignore the small signs of trouble and always trust your instincts. Because once someone shows you their true face, there's no going back. I've been betrayed in the worst way possible, but I refuse to let her define my future. I'm taking back control, and I'm doing it for myself and my kids. That's what keeps me going every day. No matter how dark it gets, I know I'll come out of this stronger. I have to. Looking back now, I realize that this whole nightmare has changed me forever. I used to think I knew what trust and loyalty meant, but losing everything I held dear, my wife, the money, the stability, shattered that illusion. Still, despite the pain, I learned some hard truths about myself. I learned that I'm capable of surviving betrayal, of fighting for what's right, even when everything seems to be falling apart. I learned that sometimes the only way to move forward is to face the truth head-on, no matter how ugly it is. The court finally ruled in my favor, awarding me full custody of the girls and ordering to pay back the stolen money. She was furious, of course, screaming and crying, but her manipulative tactics had no effect anymore. I saw through her lies, her tears, her desperate attempts to turn everyone against me. I knew I had done everything I could to protect my kids and myself, and that was enough. I finally felt a sense of closure, even if the scars would stay with me for a long time. Since then, I've been rebuilding my life slowly. It's not easy, trust is still a fragile thing, and the betrayal runs deep. But I've started therapy, talking through everything I went through, and learning to forgive myself for trusting the wrong person. I've also focused on my kids, making sure they feel loved and secure. They're everything to me now, and I owe it to them to be stronger, to be better. This experience has taught me to be more cautious, to pay attention to the red flags I once ignored. It's also made me realize how important it is to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. I refuse to let her betrayal define my future. I've come to accept that not everyone is who they seem to be, and that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail just to keep what's yours. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't ignore the small signs of trouble because they often turn out to be warnings. And never be afraid to stand up for yourself, no matter how overwhelming the situation seems. You might feel broken now, but you're stronger than you think. Healing takes time, but it's possible. I know that firsthand. In the end, I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned, even if they came at a terrible cost. I've lost a lot, but I've gained a new perspective on life. I've learned that betrayal doesn't have to break you if you choose to fight back. And most importantly, I've learned that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way to find the light again. I'm still healing, still moving forward. But I'm doing it on my own terms now, and that's enough.